We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Thursday night, July 11, 2024, as we record a new episode. I hope everyone got a chance to get a free Slurpee on 7-Eleven Day. The Chicago White Sox wrapped up their series against the Minnesota Twins. The good news, they finally beat the Twins this season. Bad news, they lost another series despite having the lead in each game. But we did see history as Immaculate Kopech accomplishes an immaculate inning, the first in White Sox history in over 100 years, and Drew Thorpe continues to be steady in his starts. However, there's an issue with Eloy Jimenez we must chat about. We'll also preview the upcoming series against the Pittsburgh Pirates, the last series before the All-Star break. And the Major League Baseball draft is this upcoming Sunday. Who do we want the White Sox to take 5th overall? Let's get started. Joining me is Sox Machine's beat reporter, James Fegan, for this episode. And hello, James. After openly worrying about Michael Kopech in our last episode, he bounced back nicely with back-to-back scoreless outings against the Twins and an included immaculate inning on Wednesday. On just that front, how cool of a piece of history, like the first time in a century that a White Sox pitcher has thrown an immaculate inning. What was it like for you being at the game in the press box? Like, did you notice right away he did that?
That was immaculate inning? Like, no, not at all. Someone, I think I heard like right away once he did it that it was. I was like, oh yeah, it was. But very much it was just like, look at this guy throwing strikes. Look at this guy like getting ahead of hitters. Look at him throwing breaking balls. Look at him throwing breaking balls for strikes. I was like reacting to all these elements of it to like, these are just not things he's shown, especially out of the gate. And seeing like him just look better, like struck me more than the idea of like, oh, it's 9 or even 6 or 7 strikes in a row. Just like, oh, these are efficient at bats. This is how he could operate. It's been so long since seeing it. So the fact that Kopech is on the other side of the scale saying like, yeah, pitch 4, I thought I was going, like, you really retained your confidence if you think like, all right, they're less than halfway to immaculate inning, that would a point where no one would notice it close, you're like already thinking it when you've been struggling at fastball for strikes. He must have really known that he was feeling it at that point.
I wish I had that self-confidence, honestly. Like, professional athletes have a self-confidence level that I will never be able to attain. But at pitch 4, to your point, like, oh yeah, I'm going to throw 5 more strikes and I'm going to strike out both of these guys. Like, it's just incredible.
And like not Michael, not just like because he's struggling. Like, I think if Ohtani gave that quote, we'd be like, wow, this guy's different. There's no level of success that would make that like a normal thing, like 40% of the way to something that never happens. Yeah, probably a done deal.
Yeah, no Minnesota Twins pitcher has ever thrown an immaculate inning. It's the first immaculate inning in 2024. It could be the only immaculate inning because they're so difficult to accomplish. The Texas Rangers are the other team in Major League Baseball that have never had an immaculate inning. So That's just how crazy of a feat it is. And Jim Margulis on SoxMachine.com, he did an excellent job recapping the last time the White Sox had an immaculate inning all the way back in 1923. And the close calls, like Matt Thornton in 2010 almost had an immaculate inning. So definitely check out that post, a great White Sox history that Jim wrote about on SoxMachine.com. But back to Kopech. Kopech had some interesting things to say post-game in what has worked for him in his last 2 outings against the Twins about utilizing more breaking pitches.
Tough stretch, just felt a little bit inconsistent. Had a game plan that, I've been tentative to lean on, and we finally leaned into it. Corey's done a great job of sticking with me through that, and to see it pay off was extremely rewarding. I didn't expect it to be in that manner, but it was pretty fun.
What is the game plan that you changed a little bit?
Just to throw more off speed, throw more breaking balls. I was able to land my cutter probably more consistently. I would have been able to land my fastball today, but it made my fastball play better, which is what we talked about. I think that leaned a little too heavily on being a hard thrower in this game, and that kind of distanced me from being as much of a complete pitcher. And I had spent the past 2 years starting, trying to become a more complete pitcher, and to not be able to go out there and do what I've worked on for so long was a little disheartening. So at this point, that's what my focus is to continue building on myself as a pitcher and being able to get the job done whenever I'm called on to do so.
Now, James, are we going to see more of the cutter in upcoming outings from Kopech? Like, did you get that impression that the days of him throwing nothing but fastballs could be finally over?
Sure. He basically said, and I talked to him like in Arizona about it. He's just like, yeah, Katz is talking about throwing more breaking balls. Wise is talking about throwing more breaking balls. Maldonado is talking about more breaking balls. Lee is, but like, if I'm falling behind in the count, I gotta get back in with my best stuff. Like, and talking as the way he did after both, I talked to him one-on-one, and like after he talked out that outing, he was both saying like, I've got to a point where I'm just kind of forcing myself to throw breaking balls, like whether or not I have feel for it, whether or not like it's technically the best spot or I feel super confident about it, I just know I need to pepper them in. And like, as Jim broke down, like he hung one during I think his second at bat the other day, but he's at a point where the anticipation for him is so built up for a fastball, and it's a fastball good enough where it can occupy all the attention of the opposing hitter, that he's really, tendencies might adjust a little bit as he does it for like outings and weeks, but he just has to throw them at this point and have them be in the neighborhood, and even just throwing it for strikes, like that's going to be pretty much an automatic take first time anybody sees them in the at bat. So if he can just groove them over, because they're 93-mile-an-hour cutters, they're not easy to hit. I think it should be an immediate game changer for him, whether or not it's something he still has to adjust and get more feel of as it goes on and becomes part of his scouting report again. But as far as looking good for the deadline, he really just needs to kind of make himself throw them.
Yeah, because that would be my follow-up to him listening to the quote that I've been hesitant. Is there a specific reason why he's hesitant? Is it just a confidence issue that he just doesn't think he can throw a breaking pitch in the strike zone?
He almost kind of termed his like mindset that like he after years of kind of struggling to be a starter, constantly trying to incorporate all 4 pitches, he really felt kind of free at the start of the year, just like, I'm back to just doing what I do best. I'm blowing everybody away, and that's how I'm going to work. And my fastball is my best pitch, and it's elite pitch. Let me just ride it as much as possible. So he really got out of a way of feeling as confident as his breaking stuff, because it's just stuff that he didn't want to have to like labor over and fence over anymore. And he had a lot of success early in the season, really just leaning into just blowing everybody away. But it seemed like as the returns were diminishing, especially when he got into more situations where his control worsened, he didn't feel anywhere near good enough to get back into 2-0, 3-0, 3-1 counts with trying to get me over breaking balls. He just wanted to go on his elite pitch. And, it is an elite pitch when properly utilized and commanded. But I think he got into a space where he's just kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy a little bit of like, I'm going to fall behind, and then I have to do this one thing whenever I fall behind.
Well, we'll see on how Kopech fares. I mean, if he continues to throw that well, especially this weekend against Pittsburgh, I'm sure Chris Getz will receive more text messages from contending GMs. There is a loose rumor that maybe the New York Yankees would be interested in Michael Kopech as they look to bolster their bullpen, especially in the 6th and 7th innings, looking for those high velocity type of pitchers, especially since everybody wants Mason Miller from the Oakland Athletics, but there's so many years of control, and that would be such a huge deal for such a young reliever for any team to acquire Mason Miller before the deadline. So maybe Kopech is the fallback plan, and hopefully he continues to pitch better, not just for the White Sox sake, but for his personal sake, as well as a chance to pitch for a contending team in the postseason this year. Now, for the series recap, the White Sox had a 5-2 lead in the first game of the series on Monday. They lost 8-6 in extra innings. It was rained out on Tuesday, so Wednesday was a straight doubleheader. The White Sox won the first game 3-1. Luis Robert had a big home run in that one. In game 3, they lost 3-2. They had a 2-0 lead. So the White Sox are 27-68. Unless they sweep Pittsburgh this weekend, they will not have 30 wins at the All-Star break. Currently, for those that are interested in this type of history, the White Sox are 4 games behind the 1948 squad for worst record ever in franchise history. So they have the worst record ever the first 95 games of the season. Last year at this point, the 2023 White Sox were 40-55, and then of course all the trades happened and they finished the season 21-46. So other than Kopech's big moment, Luis Roberts' big home run, for an inning, the Minnesota Twins also played like the White Sox. They had multiple defensive mistakes, costing runs. But then Jordan Leisure had a tough time in his return against the Twins, and the offense beat him up, and of course they lost that first game. But it's time to pull out the magnifying glass again and torch another White Sox mainstay. So last podcast, we did that to Michael Kopech. And look what happened. Positive things. Kopech bounced back. So this is our another attempt to hopefully somebody else bounces back. This time the magnifying glass is on Eloy Jimenez. Since his return on June 23rd, Eloy has a 71% ground ball rate. 71%. For a dude who cannot run without possibly re-injuring himself, and it gets worse. In Eloy's last 30 games spanning 105 at-bats, he only has 1 home run, and he hasn't hit a home run since May 14th against the Washington Nationals, so it's almost been 2 months since Eloy's hit a home run, and his season OPS is now 647, thanks to a 353 slugging percentage. James, this question was posed to me on Twitter, and at this point, at least for me, it's kind of hard to disagree, but I'd like to get your thoughts on this question. Did the super bouncy ball in 2019 and 2020 give us a false impression of the type of hitter Eloy Jimenez is?
A little bit, like in terms of like inflated his numbers that year. I don't know if he was like hitting well enough to get 31 bombs with a normal ball that season, but also no, like I don't think he was like not a plus power guy before that. And as much as like the ground ball tendency has kind of always been elevated, throughout his career, he was really good in 2020. Also another weird season and small sample, but with a higher home run per fly ball rate than he was in 2019. I thought he was, at least watching him eye testing, he was like a, developmentally a more advanced hitter the next year. In 2020. I think the guy, the second half of 2022, has been more ground ball oriented, probably not someone you think of like hitting the ball trajectory to be, 40 home runs, but maybe more of a guy who, slugs in the 500s and hits 30, but hits a lot of doubles. But the guy in the second half of 2022 was a really good hitter. It wasn't like, it wasn't when the balls are flying out, and it was very legit with his peripherals as good as they have ever been in his career. The ground balls have exploded since then, especially now. And I think the leg injuries have piled up where it's one, you're not seeing consistently like just healthy enough to be on time and playing regularly enough the way he basically played like the entire second half of 2022, pretty healthy. You haven't gotten that sustained run where you're just seeing his best form very often. And it seems like the accumulation of leg injuries are seemingly diving into what he was able to do to lift the ball, where one, he and his personal hitting coach even reached a point this last offseason. They said that they needed to, adjust his swing or adjust his hand placement because the lift had diminished so much in his game to where now it's not even something that's been a reliable fix. I think it's been kind of a steeper fall off in the last 2 years than his whole career is fraudulent, just kind of this 1 year. Maybe looking at Yoan Moncada outside of the 2019 prism, maybe he was never going to be a 20 home run plus guy with the way he's approached it. He really hasn't approached that level of power output since then. I think he was a really good hitter and like consistently had hard contact in 2019. But now that we're farther out from it, obviously there's been a host of issues and COVID and injury since then for him too. But maybe he's the guy who I look at his 2019 power output and think like, that hasn't really happened again, and didn't really maybe happen a ton before that. Even if we always thought it's theoretically possible because of the bat speed and the strength, he never really was a 25 home run guy again.
You mentioned the home run to fly ball rate, so that's the percentage of fly balls that result in home runs. In Eloy's first 2 seasons in 2019 and 2020, as James mentioned, 27% his rookie year, 31% in 2020. That has shrunk into 12% in 2024. That's a 19% decrease in the amount of fly balls Eloy's hitting that are resulting into home runs. So it seems to me that the easy fix is bring back the super bouncy ball for Eloy and the White Sox sake, James. They're the only ones that get to play with it to save their numbers. But as you mentioned, like Eloy's working with his personal hitting coach. He's trying to make adjustments. I'm going to assume that Pedro Grifol hasn't even thought about the idea of giving Eloy's DH at bats to somebody else. But the question does have to be raised, especially after the trade deadline, when the White Sox make these moves and it's August, September, and they want to start giving younger players opportunities to see what they've got going to next season. And Eloy, at least at the contract that he currently has, that club option, is not going to be picked up. How much longer are the White Sox going to roll with Eloy as the everyday DH?
If you listen to Grifol, probably as much as he's healthy for, they'll roll him out there and try to get him right. But it'd be interesting if it changed a little bit post deadline, when kind of the point of showcasing him is obviously out of the way. But I also don't necessarily see their hand being forced by like they don't have like this first base DH type mashing in AAA. They the height of their prospects are really, position oriented or on the dirt in some way. You could talk yourself in the idea of some scenario that you're trying to play, in September, Colson, Ryan Ramos, and Lennon Sosa all at the same time, and maybe it'll be easier to put Ramos over at first and put Vaughn at DH and all these sort of things. But I think it'd be their system is not built to where there's like, a Kyle Manzardo who really needs the DH opportunities at the second half.
Yeah.
I don't think Tim Elko has that type of role in the long-term outlook to force that.
And Elko's not there yet either, even though he's 25 years old and age will be working against him eventually. So no one's there to force the issue for Eloy, so we're stuck with Eloy as the everyday DH. Hopefully he gets it figured out. But you mentioned like not having his legs. I mean, in a large part, that's kind of what happened to Tim Anderson. And Tim Anderson just got DFA'd. Like, it's weird to look at Eloy Jimenez at age 27, James, and be really concerned that after the White Sox decline his club option, like free agency is not going to be kind to him if he doesn't pick it up. I don't know what team would be willing to give him a guaranteed contract as their DH, because every team wants to keep that spot open, because every team seems like they have an Eloy Jimenez, a promising power hitter in their system that they could go give DH at bats because they don't trust him to play defense. Like, I don't know what the near future holds for Eloy after the season if he doesn't start hitting.
Yeah, like I could see something small for a team that has like a very specific like fix in mind that they have from afar, but I wouldn't think it's some sort of robust market where he's getting any multi-year offers or necessarily has like a super guaranteed everyday role if like it doesn't click right away. So he's capable of kind of going nuclear for stretches. We've even seen at least brief ones this year in between injuries. I think the latest hamstring thing, cut short what was a decent little hot streak. So it's hard to rule out somebody who I saw just dominate in the minor leagues and, even in the major league level to such a degree. But right now, I would think it's like in the small 1 year commitment or picking like a minor league deal that you think is really interesting.
Yeah, it's tough. Eloy That's it, man. For your sake, for the White Sox sake, for people watching this team with the remaining games we've got left in this season. Hopefully he does get it figured out. But yeah, 71% ground ball rate with the hamstrings that he has. It's not going to work. Now, something that has been working for the White Sox is Drew Thorpe. And Thorpe now has made 6 starts in his major league career with the White Sox. It's 5 good starts, 1 really bad start. And that's what jumps out to me looking at the game log, because against the Twins, even though the White Sox lost that game, Drew Thorpe went 6 innings, allowed just 3 hits, 2 earned runs. The 2 earned runs were solo home runs. He walked 1 batter. He only struck out 1 batter as well on 76 pitches. But on the season, Thorpe has allowed 12 runs, and 8 of them have come against one opponent. He's given up 15 runs on the season, 8 against the Arizona Diamondbacks. So his other 5 starts, just 7 runs allowed by Drew Thorpe. So he's having a really good start with the White Sox, but it's not a lot of strikeouts, James. So how is he doing this? How is Drew Thorpe able to get deepish into games while minimizing the damage allowed by the opponent?
I mean, yes, to be specific, with posts after the Twins start, he was like, they are super aggressive. They swung really early, and they have a low strikeout rate. So we kind of knew that coming in, and then it played that way right off the bat. So we were doing just a lot of like mixed pitches and get them just off time enough and get themselves out, and then inducing a lot of like medium fly outs and weak contact. And it seemed like a little bit like, I'm not saying like the strikeouts have been super robust outside of that start, but at least he was leaning into a specific game plan the other night. I think he he's showing, was extremely confident after the Twins start. He just kind of said, like, I think he got asked about the streak, which somehow he's the only White Sox pitcher to have 4 straight starts of 6 innings or more, or 3 hits or less, or 2 runs or less. I guess the hits filter is like probably doing a lot of work there. In some way, it's probably a little bit about how there are no hits anymore in the modern baseball, making it kind of a historical anomaly. But he was there. It's like, this is who I am. This is what I'll be. Like, I get outs. Like I feel like we're seeing a little bit of that. The way he succeeded in the minor leagues, it was a little bit more contact oriented than he was in the past against lower level hitters. You would think him being a guy who doesn't blow everyone away, but as well about command and sequencing, that he'd probably be rack up strikeouts against less advanced hitters than he will up here, where he'll probably just get more contact. I will say, like, he flashed some more 93s in Miami, and I was talking about it. He's like, yeah, I've been working on some mechanical things. Like, in general, the veals have been a bit lower this season on a couple pitches in a way where it seems like it needs to be ironed out. He didn't think it was anything major, but he felt like things were getting closer to where he was at spots last season. And that was kind of what went into his cutter change, because it was blurring with the slider a little bit, and now he's able to get it more 86, 88, which is a bit better for jamming left-handed hitters. But then he went and turned around, and he was like 89 to 91 against the Twins. So I don't know if there's like a straight line path where his velo's going up and up and up. It would be nice to see more games of 93. I feel like that gave him a bit more ability to like finish off at bats up in the zone for a fastball, like when it's the first fastball they've seen the entire bat. But right now, it looks like really confident, can get major league hitters out, but without that bat missing, or without that power to his arsenal, you wonder where the ceiling is. It looks like an effective member of the rotation. Does it look like somebody who heads up the rotation? Is maybe the question you have.
Yeah, it's 19 strikeouts to 15 walks in 32 2/3 innings so far for Drew Thorpe. So not a great strikeout to walk ratio, but to the point that James has made, maybe with some mechanical changes, we'll see more velocity for Drew Thorpe, and strikeouts will come. But he's getting results. Can't complain about the results at all. And like James said, 4 straight starts, 6 or more innings, 3 or fewer hits allowed, 2 or fewer runs allowed. And before losing on Wednesday to the Minnesota Twins in Game 2, the White Sox had won 3 straight starts by Drew Thorpe, and for the season they are 3-3 when he starts. So you gotta like that as a White Sox fan. 500 baseball when Drew Thorpe is making that start. Maybe, just maybe, we'll see more wins post trade deadline. All right, I'll stop joking. But Drew Thorpe has been pitching well as of late, and that is a good sign. And in our areas of trying to find more positivity with the Chicago White Sox, pitching right now is a good place to find it. We're going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsors, but after the break, we'll preview the upcoming series. The last one before the All-Star break is the Pittsburgh Pirates roll into town, and I'll ask James who he wants the White Sox to take 5th overall in the upcoming Major League Baseball draft next on the Sox Machine podcast.
We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Welcome back to the Sox Machine podcast. The Pittsburgh Pirates roll into town, and the Pirates are playing decent baseball. They're 45-48, still in 3rd place in the National League Central. They're 8.5 games back of the Milwaukee Brewers, but they're in that dog pile right now in the National League. They're just 2.5 games back of the final wild card spot. They've been a pretty good road team. They're 23-24 this year. And in their last 10 games, they are 5-5, and they won their last game against the Milwaukee Brewers because Paul Skenes was just absolutely awesome. We'll talk about Skenes in a moment. Your pitching problems for this series, a lot to be sorted out. On Friday night, we'll learn who the Pirate starter is later, as it's to be announced, but Garrett Crochet will make his final start before the All-Star break with the Chicago White Sox, and hopefully we'll see Crochet pitch in the All-Star game, at least for an inning. Saturday at 1:10 p.m. Central Time. Quick turnaround. Luis Ortiz for the Pirates has a 2.95 ERA. He'll make the start for Pittsburgh. Chris Flexen, who has been pitching better for the White Sox, will make that start on Saturday. And then on Sunday, Mitch Keller, who's having a very good season for the Pirates. He's got a 1.9 WAR, according to Fangraphs, a 3.40 ERA. And for the White Sox, it's currently to be announced. On that front, James, any idea what the White Sox are hoping to do in the final game before the All-Star break? Could it be a bullpen day?
Could be a bullpen day. Could be a Mike Clevenger and Friends type of day. You'd be lined up for it, and Pedro at least hinted at it, as even if it'd be unexpected. I would love, at least for story resharing purposes, to just throw Jonathan Cannon out there again, but there's also an argument with, I think, him around 120 innings last year, where you could give him a break into the offseason or extended kind of rest mid-season, and thus get him all the way to the end of the year, especially when you are less sure of other members of your rotation making it to the end of your year. They've won some of these bullpen games. I think there's an item on the rundown about if we're going to see any 110 pitch plus starts close to the All-Star break. Chad Kuhl could have a 110 pitch outing. I don't know about anyone else.
I may need it on Sunday, so stay loose, Chad. Stay loose.
Well, they'd let Chad throw like the Edwin Jackson no-hitter if he had it going.
That's true. Especially if Chad entered the game like in the 3rd inning and there was a no-hitter going. He's got it all the way. For Pittsburgh, the star is Paul Skenes. And on Thursday, as we record this, Skenes pitched 7 no-hit innings against the Milwaukee Brewers today. He got up to pitch 99, and that's when the Pirates pulled him. They're being careful right now with the amount of pitches that Paul Skenes is throwing. And Skenes made the National League All-Star team just after 2 months of pro ball. He's only made 11 starts this season, but he has a 1.90 ERA, 89 strikeouts to just 13 walks in 66 innings. And James, Skenes is really living up to the hype after being selected first overall last year. What are your thoughts about Paul Skenes? Like, is he the next Steven Strasburg?
I mean, seems like it, if not at least some of the results a touch better. Mike Shirley definitely was. I don't know if there's like an immediate application to it. I don't know if you see like Hagen Smith that way. I don't think he's on that Skenes level of dominance, but Shirley definitely said like it's a level of like that has been factored into like the draft class this year. Is like other people who can just, now that we've seen it's like not impossible, are there people who are that quick of movers, because we can think of it that way maybe a bit more loosely, even if I don't see anyone on that tier. White Sox kind of lean position oriented, so I don't necessarily think it affecting them so much, but maybe it's something they consider in the future, given maybe success they're having at Bannister, or what Garrett Crochet has been able to do. It's just kind of something to stir into the pot a little bit.
And that's a good point that you make, because especially like with Hagen Smith and Chase Burns for this draft class, Smith faced some excellent hitters this season. Travis Bazzana, Braden Montgomery, Jack Caglione, all these guys are going to be selected in the first 8 picks in Sunday's draft and dominated them. They went 0 for 9 combined against Hagen Smith with 6 strikeouts and just made them look foolish. And Smith is throwing 97, 98. Chase Burns is throwing 101 miles an hour. How much time do they need to develop in the minor leagues, James? Like, you make a good point, like off the record with me, when it comes to the draft and scouting as far as the draft, that you also need to be able to identify prospects that maybe haven't maxed out in their player development. But when you're spending $7+ million in a signing bonus in the first round, in the first 10 picks, you need for that player, you're counting on them to make the major leagues and be good for at least 6 years to merit that type of signing bonus. And I wonder if Skenes can do this, if this is going to influence other teams' thinking when they get into this position, and with all these top college programs with the pitching labs that they currently have, and try to beef up their starting pitchers to be ready for the major leagues, because obviously it helps their program's clout. If Skenes could do it, I wonder whoever drafts Hagen Smith and Chase Burns this year, if they're like, listen, there's no really point. Like, we'll send Smith and Burns to AA. If they dominate there, then yeah, they'll be in the major leagues. Then all of a sudden we're going to be looking at the drafts differently in upcoming years, especially college pitchers in the first round. Can these guys be pitching the major leagues next year? Like, they go from pitching against Tennessee, and then a year later they're throwing 7 no-hit innings against the first place Milwaukee Brewers.
Well, especially with the lottery now, what I wonder is like what happens when these guys get like drafted by contending teams. Like, what if we put Skenes in this year's draft? What would the Guardians like trying to win a division or play for the playoffs do with somebody that like seems like they can help right now, at least in some sort of role? I think that would probably really throw the level of caution that teams are really willing to bypass into relief. So I think that would be something interesting to see. And not that I know what Cleveland's doing. Apparently no one does, but like if they drafted a pitcher,
no one does.
If they drafted a pitcher, especially with the pitching issues they have right now a little bit, having watched the Spencer Howard start today, if they drafted Smith, or they drafted, especially with the level of command Smith has, would that be someone they try to, get to help them in some form this year, or, presumably when they're still safe from the White Sox threat in the division next season as well.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest complaint about the MLB draft is like, okay, cool, you drafted these guys. I will not see them in the major leagues for like 3 years. That's why everybody loves the NFL and NBA draft, because whoever these teams picked, they're starting for my favorite team that upcoming season. Well, if Paul Skenes can do it, we'll see if other pitchers can do it. But he could be just a unicorn, but man, he has been awesome this year. And I'm a little heartbroken that we're not seeing him pitch against the White Sox. I was really hoping he'd be pitching this weekend, so I get a chance to watch him in person after watching him so often, especially on TV last year at LSU. But yeah, Skenes has been awesome. And not only has Skenes been great, Mitch Keller has been great as well, as I mentioned. Jared Jones is also a very promising arm for the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Pirates, with their rebuild, they've got quite a starting pitching staff. James, the Pirates are still far back from the Milwaukee Brewers in the National League Central, but they're within striking distance of the wild card. What do you think Pittsburgh does at the trade deadline? Do you see them as buyers, or do they just stand pat and see how this ride ends after this season?
Based on reports, they want to be buyers, or they've whipped up some fan enthusiasm that they're going to be buyers, but actually have no real money to add to their budget. So I feel like they're going to make very small moves that are kind of nominal, maybe relief or platoon bat additions, but are mostly see, we're buying, but not actually very impactful. So I think they'll probably hang around kind of this 500 on the periphery of the wild card race and not really have the push forward from ownership to do it this year. But there's certainly probably a team that looks into this final series against the White Sox as a real chance to prove that they should push forward, and we'll try them out the floor with them. What really interests me about the Skenes situation is that now I think, is it 12 starts or 12 games? 9 of them have been caught by Yasmani Grandal, which suggests to me if Skenes has, say, a Greg Maddux-like career, does Yasmani Grandal become his Paul Bacco that he insists upon having on the roster? This is the one man who understands me, is Yaz, and he can only when he can catch me. And all they can do is throw up their hands and make sure that Skenes has Yasmani Grandal. Or he'll probably be fine with someone else.
Is Yaz going to talk to reporters, or is he going to be too busy this time? I didn't even think about that. He's coming back. It's his homecoming.
Remains to be seen.
Remains to be seen. Oh, yes. I wonder if the White Sox will have a highlight video for him.
I mean, he hit some bombs. He had the walk-off double against the Rays.
He did. He was huge. Yeah, 2021, man. He's the one that got that started. I mean, everyone remembers Lurie's home run, but Yaz had a big home run to get the scoring started for the White Sox in Game 3. I'm sure they'll make a nice gesture.
Also, that absurd Cubs game in 2021.
Oh, yeah. We had 8 RBIs or something? 9 RBIs?
I was at a wedding, but I had score alerts for the Sox game, and it's just my phone was just buzzing constantly for 3 hours. I thought it was absolute chaos going on.
Yeah. For the Pirates, I would like to see them make a move. I'd like to see them try. They're one of the teams outside of the playoffs that, why not? I mean, clearly you got the pitching. If offense is a problem, go get a batter who's on an expiring contract. I mean, Tommy Pham has stopped hitting for power, so I don't think that he's that attractive anymore of a trade piece. But I like to see the Pirates try. Why not?
That sounds exactly like the sort of piece the Pirates could get.
Tommy Pham and Paul DeJong. Let's have a big series, guys. You could possibly be joining Paul Skenes in Pittsburgh. We'll recap as far as what happens between the White Sox and Pirates. Again, it's the last series before the All-Star break in our next episode of the Sox Machine podcast. But that next episode is going to be recorded on Sunday night, shortly after the White Sox make their first round selection of the MLB draft. And that will be a big focus at our next podcast, and who the White Sox take 5th overall, who they also take 43rd overall. And again, the draft starts at 6 p.m. Central Time. We will be having a Sox Machine live watch party, so you could watch the MLB draft along with us and see our instant reactions and who the White Sox take 5th overall, shoot what happens in the first 4 picks. That will be on playback.tv/Sox Machine. We'll also have a link on our page at soxmachine.com that you guys can watch along the draft with us. And of course, we'll always have the draft trackers as well. For those that are new to Sox Machine, we have a game thread for the MLB draft starting on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday through the 20 rounds of who the White Sox take. It's great interaction, especially in days 2 and 3 of who is this guy? And then everybody going to Google real quick to try to get as much information as possible. But James did get a chance to be part of Mike Shirley's media scrum earlier this week. Here's the White Sox Director of Amateur Scouting on his thoughts about this draft class and specific players.
It's a pivotal moment for the organization. You guys all know where we're at. I think it's a good moment for us. The staff's worked extremely hard. There's a good blend of high school players in this group, then the college position players, and most importantly, still 2 college pitchers involved in the process. So we're excited, working hard. we still have no view who even may get to 5 at this point. So we are working hard, multiple directions, but we understand what 5 means to us. So our preference is position players at this point, just because I think that's something we're looking hard at. But I mean, we'll see. I think you got to keep adding to the arms. You can never have enough arms, so I think that's something you got to continue to invest in. We do a huge historical dive on the draft. Where do position players come from? What rounds do they come from? Where can you capture them? We're always aware what the historical value of the draft means. You have to look at all these contexts where you can get value. So we're working our ass off on that part. The biggest challenge for me, the part that I love, is the mechanical aspect of evaluating hitters, right? So I always feel good about how the operation works. What is the effort level of the operation on the hitter? Most importantly, is he a contact guy? Is he a power guy? What are you chasing out of the profile? What are you trying to acquire with the profile? At 5, obviously, we're trying to get a hit and a power tool, both involved, with great swing decisions and strike zone management. That's always going to be the most difficult part of the draft. But I think there are candidates up there that touch all those spaces for us, and I think we'll have a choice of some of these really good players. I think when you look at the first round, everybody's always going to gauge the draft by the first round. I still look, when I look at the draft board, I see 12 to 15 really good players that can define a draft that are going to be worthy of being first rounders. I do think there's a little bit of fall off once you get past the top 15, where if you're picking up the bottom of the first round, it can get a little bit cloudy for you. So I do think that's interesting, but I do think there's 12 to 15 really good players in this draft. Jack Kegley.
Yeah, in here, and obviously you've had other ones in here, but could he, if he fell to you at 5 and you decided to take him to work out, could he do both? Could he?
Yeah, I think there's a part of, we're investigating whether it can be a two-way player. I think we'd be foolish not to do that. He's done it his whole life. His baseball acumen, his baseball repertoire has been built being a two-way player. I think that's something we will continue to look at and see if that's best. But obviously, we prefer the bat over the pitching. But remember, even if he could throw once or twice a week to save his staff, stretch his staff, that could be beneficial to the club. The financial aspect of how the pool works in the draft is important. I do think there's some equivalency in the first 10 players of the draft. Personally, I don't see a bunch of separation. I do think you have to work on about 10 players on what's the value of a guy who you think is equivalent, who may be $1 million cheaper, who you could possibly get a deal with. This is something we're really working hard at.
Now, James, I've spent months covering this draft. I have written tens of thousands of words about this draft class, and I probably have a couple more thousand I'll be writing before and after draft days.
It's your Roman Empire.
It's my Roman Empire. That is correct. I'm going to reverse the table here because everyone's asking me, what do I think the White Sox are going to do? What should the White Sox do? I want your take, James. Who do you want the White Sox to take 5th overall?
Since I realized this question was coming down the pipe, I have read Fangraph's write-up of Hagen Smith, and now I'm convinced he should be the guy because I just see the value that he has, especially in terms of like the one thing in his profile, needing to develop a changeup, being a big lefty, you can throw a sweeper. Feel like Bannister could kind of work his magic of giving kind of a changeup that works for his supination of kind of a seam shifter, and with the command he already kind of has and the upward velocity, kind of fitting into a profile that's worked already. And yes, that's not an organizational need, but I could see it kind of hitting its ceiling and providing the value you want to get out of that pick. I could see how it would work in my mind a bit more than hoping another middle infielder's power profile clicks up just enough to make him not like just basically 2021 Nicky Lopez if not all the tools click. But more to the point, because they're not going to pick Hagen Smith and they're probably going to pick Connor Griffin instead, I can throw out this idea, and when it doesn't, no one will come back and be like, this doesn't work, this is a stupid idea for them to pick. They can because they'll just focus on reality instead. Whereas if I said I wanted to get Griffin doesn't work out, everyone will come back and blame me. That's how accountability works. Whereas even if Hagen Smith doesn't work out with another organization, it'd be like, hey, you would have clicked here. That would have been a good pick. Yeah. I was right. No, there's no way to check me at all. It's pretty.
I'm with you. Like, this is what I have about the philosophy with the MLB draft now. especially when you're looking at college players and what the SEC schools and the ACC schools, the Big 12 schools, just the amount of money that they are pushing to baseball programs now, and their development labs and just the stadiums and facilities is just crazy. Like the SEC, every SEC school has a better stadium and facility than the White Sox do. And the White Sox have some of the best facilities in all of minor league baseball. So when those guys leave their college programs, it's like a downgrade for them to play minor league baseball in the majors, which is just crazy. But major league teams are not pouring in $50 million like the University of Kentucky is to better their baseball program and finally get into the College World Series. With that thought, and Shirley talked about like how much the college programs are changing and the resources they have in development. I wonder, James, like philosophically, when it comes to drafts, you always hear people say, take the best player available. Well, in baseball, there's the financial aspect as well. Take the best player available that you can actually sign. I wonder eventually if things change to, we're going to take the best player available that we can sign and we're confident we can develop. Because for Shirley's tenure, it's been college pitcher, high school bat, high school pitcher, college bat. So you have 4 different type of position groups to the draft, and he's gone in a different direction every single year. He hasn't repeated until this upcoming draft, which he will be finally repeating what he's done previously. And with that thought, like, I get a lot of the criticism with Connor Griffin. White Sox fans are not confident the White Sox can help fix his hitting mechanics and help him develop. But if you give the White Sox and Brian Bannister Hagen Smith, I have all the confidence in the world Hagen Smith's going to pan out. And maybe he's the one that can replace Garrett Crochet after the White Sox trade Crochet. But at some point, don't the White Sox have to try at least develop a hitter? Because if they can't get Connor Griffin to work, when are they ever going to get it to work, right? On the hitting front, developing.
I mean, it's not Connor or bust, but yeah, I get your point that you can't give up on parts of player development, even if you acknowledge your strengths. Yes.
Right. Like that, and that's kind of where I'm at. Like, what do I want and compared to what the White Sox are going to do? I want this pick to work out for the White Sox because, as Shirley pointed out, it is a pivotal moment in the franchise. This pick cannot fail, but we've seen so many first-round picks fail for the White Sox. I just wonder if White Sox fans want more of a safety net, like assurance this is going to work out, and I'm with you. If you want that assurance, White Sox fans, then you want them to take like a Hagen Smith or Chase Burns, just because of the success they're having this year with pitchers who don't have that type of talent that those two have, and succeeding in the major league level. But if you want them to have better position players, if you want them to have a better offense, I still think they have to take the chances on like Connor Griffin's or even some of the college bats. And they're going to have to figure it out one day on how to develop hitters. They've done it previously when we were kids. The 2000 White Sox, the 2005 White Sox, Joe Crede, Aaron Rowand, those are in-house developments. They've done it before. They should be able to do it again, right, James?
Yes. I mean, I think they would probably point to Colson, at least from where he was as a draft prospect to where he's gotten as a relative success story, still on the road for success. Or I don't think they viewed Colson as like he's a bust now because he's had a poor offensive second half. I think they would view that as still like a big developmental victory. They're pretty positive, even though he's plateaued at Birmingham pretty hard. I think in terms of where he was last year, I think they would probably laud the progress that Jacob Gonzalez has made and say like, hey, we put him through biochemical analysis and fixed some things with the leg drive, and he's looking a lot more like a prospect now. So I think if anything, they'd be riding their success a little bit. And I think Smith needing to develop a changeup kind of makes him a counterexample of that. And I've heard scouts who really love Chase Burns, even kind of accounting for the fact that he's at Wake Forest. But some have spoke to the fact that when they're at that really like super competent like SEC development engine, maybe there's not as much ceiling to go as if they're at like a normal program, or certainly if they're coming out of high school. I think they did pretty well value-wise with some guys out of Texas Tech where, back when they took Davis Martin, who weren't super advanced because it wasn't like a super developed program at that time, and they found in the rough. Now, what they're able to hunt on the third day is different from what we're talking about as a fully developed top 5 pick. But I think that's some element of fear that scouts have, is that maybe there's not any more kind of meat on the bone, so to speak, for some of those guys who have already been at these places that are as good as like major league organizations are at developing players, that there's not like a big leap waiting for them. And you could say, if you're at the bottom of the league and have a long development track, like, hey, let's chase what might be a higher ceiling for this guy who's got all the tools in the world. The swing is kind of messed up. Like we can fix that. And that's our way to getting a superstar, rather than just like trying to get something that's basically off the rack, is going to lower the ceiling a little bit and is providing immediacy that we don't really need given where our competitive window is.
Well, it harkens back to the story you did about George Wilco, which that $1 million investment in the 7th round is looking great for the White Sox. It's a wild card. We'll see if his other metrics, his strikeout rate, his BABIP, those are totally not sustainable, or at least I hope the strikeout rate is not sustainable for George Wilco. But it was that point in your piece, like, the White Sox are not going to sign Aaron Judge. Like, they just don't have that appetite of spending that type of cash and signing the superstar hitters to those types of contracts.
That's a paraphrase of something that J.J. Lally said directly.
Yeah, so, like, we have to develop the Aaron Judges. If we want Aaron Judge for the White Sox, we have to draft and develop Aaron Judge.
Good luck.
And that's where I wonder if I was a fly on the wall in the draft room right now for the White Sox and the conversations that they're having, that's got to be the conversation with Shirley making it, I'm not like super clear, like 100% that they're going position player front, but the things that James and I have heard over the last couple of weeks, it's very, very high the White Sox are to take a position player at pick number 5. And I wonder if that's just that mentality within the organization. Clearly, we need more runs. We need more power. We need better position players. We're not going to be able to sign them. We're going to have to draft and develop them. And we're going to have to spend our top draft picks on these position players. And I just wonder if that's going to be the mentality in the next couple of years.
Not only not gonna be able to sign him, but didn't have the easiest time trying to trade for him this spring training with Dylan Cease.
Well, I think that's gonna have, you mentioned that too before the deadline. Even if you trade Garrett Crochet and Luis Robert, teams right now are not offering like their top 30 prospects for them because they want to hold on to them. Like, so then how do you get those guys?
Like, at least not position side, because you can project those to be in your competitive window a lot more than pitchers.
Right.
You don't put your Gunnar Hendersons ever on the market, pretty much. Whereas, like, you can always assign a little bit of risk to some of your arms.
I know that's what Chris Getz wants, but if nobody's offering them, then what do you do before the deadline? Like, it's a tricky situation. I agree with Shirley. Like, in these next couple of weeks, do you think that these next 2 weeks for the White Sox, both the draft and the trade deadline, James, is this like the most pivotal moment in the next couple of years to determine if the White Sox are ever going to get back into contention within the next 3 years by like 2027?
It's a pivotal moment. I think you can't ever like rule out, other player development wins from guys who are already in there that change our perception of what they're at, or different signings. I don't want to put it all on now. There's the 10th pick could wind up being the best player they acquire during this whole 24-month span the next year.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very important. It's not all or nothing. It's not like if this pick doesn't work out, fold it. Even though that would probably pull it like 7 to 8% with White Sox fans at the moment. But
right.
It's very important. I don't think it's like the end all be all and necessarily like the best players on the next playoff team will be in these window, but it very well could be, and they need to treat it as such.
Yeah, Cleveland right now, with the record that they have, one of the best records in the American League and the number 1 pick. Hey, this is nice to have. The White Sox selected 5th overall. Save us. Whoever you are, please save our franchise. We need you. Totally different types of pressure. And that's how the baseball draft is so much different than the other sports drafts. And it kind of makes it chaotic and fun at the same time. But again, the MLB draft starts on Sunday, July 14th at 6 p.m. Central Time. We'll have our final top 100 list coming out Saturday night. I'll also have my final mock draft. Speaking of the mock draft, we will be having our mock draft contest again on SoxMachine.com. It'll be released Friday morning, so you guys can be submitting your mock drafts, your predictions for the first 30 picks of the 2024 MLB draft. Many of you did well last year. You beat me with your guesses. We had a few that got 6 out of 30 correct. That's pretty good. That beat a lot of pundits as well, people who cover this for a living. So we'll have that contest again on Friday. But yeah, MLB draft coming up on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. That will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. If you just discovered the Sox Machine podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also listen to our show on our YouTube channel now at youtube.com/Sox Machine. Thank you for everyone doing that. Please hit the subscribe button to our YouTube channel, and we'll be more interactive with the comments section moving forward. We've also been told Spotify is going to have comments as well. So we'll try to find those comments and interact with you guys on those platforms as well. You can always interact with us on social media or on all the platforms at Sox Machine. Follow James. He'll be at the White Sox games this weekend at JR Fegan for the latest updates and news regarding the White Sox. And you can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. If you'd like full access to our coverage of the Chicago White Sox, sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine, where our Patreon supporters not only get ad-free versions of both the podcast and the website, but James has been doing outstanding work interviewing White Sox scouts and the White Sox ride-along. Excellent coverage. That is for our Patreon subscribers. So again, unlock all of our access to the Chicago White Sox and what they are doing as an organization. Monthly plans start at $5. You can save with an annual subscription. Again, sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com, your home for all things Chicago White Sox baseball, and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.